Okay, go ahead.
Our group presentation tonight is on the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services by Katie Yu, Shiloh Sipes, Amanda Beckenstoss, and myself, Rachel Jackman. Many of us have heard of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, otherwise known as the HHS. Although the name might sound familiar, we may not understand what role they play in the healthcare industry. Today, we'll be discussing some of the key functions and responsibilities of the HHS. We'll cover topics such as the organizational structure, the personalities or principal players, including the secretary and OIG, as well as their functions and principal roles. To the right is a picture of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Their headquarters are located on the foot of Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. Here we have the HHS seal. And Shiloh will join us to discuss the personalities of the HHS.
So the leadership of the HHS is, it includes like about 40 positions. These three I picked out to discuss about them. Mary Kay Wakefield, who is the acting deputy secretary. She's the second position behind the HHS secretary, which is Sylvia Matthews Burwell. Some of the organizations she's been a part of includes the Health Resources and Services Administration for about 6 years. It's similar to HHS. It's a separate agency that similarly helps healthcare services and communities. And then towards the right, we have Andy Slavitt, who is the acting administrator, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. And I thought it would be appropriate to include him in this presentation because we are talking about Medicare and Medicaid in this lesson. Pretty much he oversees programs pertaining to Medicaid, Medicare, Children's Health Insurance Program, and Health Insurance Marketplace. So he's kind of basically seeing the big picture of pretty much Medicare and Medicaid. And then of course we have our top person, who is Miss Sylvia Matthews Burwell. She's the HHS secretary. So on the next slide, we go into a little bit about what the leadership composes of. It's organized into three main groups. There's the Office of the Secretary, which is the head people of the organization. They kind of see the big picture of HHS. Each person kind of deals with a specific, specific issue. Some of those issues include like financial resources, global affairs, health planning, evaluation, and public affairs. The next group is the operating division leaders, and they're kind of more specific. That included Andy Slavitt, who was the Medicare and Medicaid leader. Other organizations they deal with is the Central Center of Diseases, FDA, which is the Food and Drug Administration. And then finally, we have the regional office, which they ensure the department maintains close contact with state, local, and tribal partners, and they address the needs of communities and individuals. So there's 10 regions, and each region they kind of monitor a certain area of the United States. And then, like I said, over 40 positions are employed, and that link on the slide leads to, it kind of shows all the people involved with HHS leadership and a little bit of a background on of where they come from, what their credentials are. And so for the next slide, we kind of talk more into going more towards Sylvia Matthews Burwells, who is pretty much the head person of the department. She was sworn in as the 22nd Secretary of Health and Human Services in June 2014. She was actually nominated by President Barack Obama. Her main goal as HHS Secretary is for every American to have access to some sort of health care. She's called in for the department to operate under three guidelines. Number one is to deliver results on a wide range of complex issues. Number two, it's to strengthen the relationships that drive progress. And number three, to build strong teams with the talent and focus to deliver impact for the American people. And some of the issues that she's had to deal with as the secretary is the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, commonly known as Obamacare, and the Ebola outbreak a couple of years ago. And on the website, if we want to research about it, there is an email address you can contact her, and that's pretty much what her main goals are as a secretary.
Okay, and so I will continue talking about the structure of the Health and Human Service organizations. So the next slide is the primary structures that we mentioned earlier. So the Office of the Secretary is directed support by the 3 parts, by the Deputy Secretaries, the Chief of Staff, and the number of the Assistant Secretary's office and operating divisions. So the immediate office of the Secretary include the Executive Secretaries and Office of Human Reform, and the third part is Office of Intergovernment and External Affairs. So you can see on the graph that it was really, it's like the easy graph that you can see how they divided. And on the next slide, you will see the the 4 picture that under each one, under each group that they have a lot of office, and I put the details on the next slide. So under the Office of the Secretary, there's a lot of office, because just like the picture we saw on the previous slides, that I personally think it's like a house. If you want to build a building, you need a foundation that's really solid to build a really good structures. So they have under each staff office that they still have a lot of office to support it. So under the Office of Secretary, they have Office of Assistant Secretary for Administrations, which we know as ASN as well. And there's a lot of that we will still mention later on in our slide. I just pick up some of the well-known one, including the Office of the Assistant Secretary for the Legislation and the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs, something. Going to the next slide, we will see the other branch, which is operating divisions. And under the operating divisions, also have the Administration for Children and Family. It's more specific, and they do like individual things that will help those individual groups. Like the next one is like the Administration for the community living. So that's like specific for the community living. So the operating division, the office over there is more specific for the purpose. In the next slide, I choose one of the example is ACF, Administrations of Children and Family. So each staff office also have their programs and the branches in order to run the business more smoothly. So that's my part.
Cool. So just like Katie said, the HHS has many different agencies and offices. They are currently working with 11 operating divisions, including 8 agencies in the U.S. Public Health Services and 3 Human Services agencies. Like she said, some of the key groups that work under HHS, like she said, the admin of children and family services, community living, public affairs, and such. I just picked out some that were a little bit more well known. So the functions and the roles of HHS, if you will go on to the next screen, are to enhance and protect the health and well-being of all Americans. I really think that I didn't realize how all-encompassing HHS was until we really got down and studied it more. They accomplish this by providing effective health and human services and fostering advances in medicine, public health, and social services. Some of their strategic goals are to strengthen healthcare, advance scientific knowledge and innovation, advance health, safety, and the well-being of Americans, efficiency, transparency, accountability, and effectiveness. One of the things that I thought was very interesting was the safety aspect, and on the next one we find out that they are truly the fraud patrol. So the Office of Inspector General is charged with fighting waste, fraud, and abuse in Medicare, Medicaid, and more than 300 other HHS programs. So they deal with HIPAA compliancy, the Federal False Act, and the Federal Anti-Kickback Laws, Stark Law, Care Fraud Statute, which we will actually get into more next week. I chose to go into a little bit more about a couple of the divisions that are within HHS. The CDC, the mission of the CDC is that it works 24/7 to protect America from health, safety, and security threats, both foreign and in the US. Whether diseases start at home or abroad, are chronic or acute, curable or preventable, human error or deliberate attack, CDC fights disease and supports communities and citizens to do the same. Some of their roles are detecting and responding to new and emerging health threats, tackling the biggest health problems causing death and disability for Americans, putting science and advanced technology into action to prevent disease, promote healthy and safe behaviors, communities, and environment, developing leaders and training the public health workforce, including disease detectives, health ultimately. On the next one, we find out some of their current campaigns, which are kind of hot topics in, I think, all of America right now. You can see ADHD, cancer, diabetes, heart disease, flu, STDs, food safety, healthy weight, smoking and tobacco, vaccines, and they even have a traveling guide. So if you're going outside of the United States or even within, they give you little tips of what to look forward to in those countries and whatnot. And they also talk about emergency preparedness. The next group was the FDA, and some of the things that they regulate are food, which is not just food, but supplements, bottled water, food additives, infant formulas. They do both prescription and non-prescription drugs. They regulate biologics, which are vaccines, blood and blood products, gene therapy, etc. Medical device, simple and complex, down to tongue depressors. They get to make sure that those are safe. Lasers and ultrasounds. Another thing they regulate are the electronic products that give off radiation, such as microwaves or X-ray equipment. They also regulate cosmetics, which have color additives, skin moisturizers and cleansers, nail polishes and perfume, and veterinary products such as food and drug for all animals, and tobacco products for including cigarettes and roll your own tobacco products.
Thank you, Amanda. As you can see, the success of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services lay in the hands of many talented and hardworking individuals and departments. Today, we've taken a look at the inner workings of the HHS, including many functions, principles, and responsibilities. Their contribution to the United States healthcare industry is both admirable and beneficial to all of us. We hope you've enjoyed our presentation and understand a little bit more about the HHS. Thank you.
Very good. Great work, ladies. That was really good job. You covered the topics really well. And I learned some stuff today too, so that's great. One thing I wanted to point out, and I'm very glad that you guys, Shiloh, that you pointed out Andy Slavitt. That name will come up on a test. So I can say that on here, and there's still people that are going to forget about it. So Andy Slavitt. Make sure you remember that. Everybody that's watching this too, watching the recording, remember Andy Slavitt and what he does. But again, yeah, very good work. You guys covered it, all the questions that we asked, so great job. So I'm just going to ask you guys the question of what is the most interesting thing that you learned while you're studying this, and I'll start with Amanda. Then we'll go to Katie, Rachel, and then Shyla will close it up. So go ahead, Amanda. Oh, did we lose her? Man, she got out of here just in time, so she didn't have to answer the question. Hey, at least it lasted long enough to do the presentation. That was good.
Maybe we'll catch her again at the end.
Yes, go ahead, Katie. Go ahead and answer.
You mean the interesting things I learned? So I'm more focused on seeing the structure of the organizations. So I'm looking up all the resources that I can find to see how many different departments and different offices that they have. And one of the interesting things I found is I thought that they wouldn't have that many under each group. I thought it would just be like, oh, this department and have like 3 people working with it, but it's not like that. It's like they are like, just like I mentioned on the presentations, they are like building the house.
Yeah.
It's step by step, and like there's a lot of people have to work together, and there's a lot of office and agencies and programs has to work together. And that's one thing I learned, and it was like impressed me that they have so many things have to work together, not just like, oh, this department have their own job and nothing to deal with another one.
Yeah, no, I agree. That when I first learned about HHS too, and I saw the how big it was, and how many working parts are within it, that blew my mind. So I agree with you on that. All right, Rachel.
I was going to say something along those lines. I was really surprised at all the different departments and all the personalities. It's like almost like the list was never ending, and it kind of made me a little intimidated because I know that I need to, I need to understand, and not that I have to know every single thing that goes into it, but I do want to get, be able to even look into it a little more than we have in this presentation, and be able to understand, because I think they play a really important role in the healthcare industry. So I just found that I think it gives us something to focus on with this presentation and kind of catch the basics. And I think there's a lot more we can learn. And I think that it's important that we understand a little bit about the workings of the HHS. So I found that interesting.
Great. Yeah, definitely. Very important organization for healthcare in the country, for sure. All right, Shiloh.
It's kind of going along the lines with what Katie and Rachel said. I feel like when we think of healthcare, we just focus so much on, hospitals and patient care that we don't realize how much of a big picture it is. And just learning about the HHS, it's kind of opened my mind about healthcare and realize that there's more to it than just, kind of regular patient care. It's just like little divisions of, just various stuff, including like Medicare and Medicaid, the CDC, even to global affairs. Another interesting thing was kind of just the responsibilities that Sylvia Matthews Burwell has to take. It's kind of like Rachel says, it's really intimidating. I kind of give props to Ms. Burwell for just taking on this role that's just such a big part of the nation and in healthcare.
Great. Thank you. Definitely. Very big role, and a role that's highly scrutinized by people as well. So it'd be definitely a tough role to be in. All right, so I'm going to stop recording, but hang on.